Call the August 25th, 2026 meeting of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Board of Education to order adoption of, there being no opposition, the agenda is adopted by unanimous consent. Is there a motion to approve the consent items on the agenda as presented?
I move.
Second.
All those, it's been moved and properly moved by Rankin, second by Monterey Duval. All those in favor, by show of hands. It's unanimous, Madam Clerk. I turn to Dr. Hill for appointment. Turn to me for what? Personnel appointments?
I apologize. All right, this evening we have one principal appointment for Whitewater Academy Elementary School. We'd like to say congratulations to Dr. Mitchell Charos, who will be the new principal. He has 10 years in education. He's currently serving as the assistant principal at Pinewood Elementary School and has served as a multi-classroom leader, an expanded impact teacher and classroom teacher at Sterling Elementary, and holds a doctorate from the University of North Carolina at Charlotte. Congratulations, Dr. Charos.
Thank you. We have one public hearing on the agenda this evening. We have the first reading of modified policy OMWSB, Minority Women Small Business Enterprises Program. I turn to Dr. Hatch.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is the first reading of the proposed modification of policy O-MWSB, Minority Women Small Business Enterprises Program. The proposed policy modification does the following. It changes the title of the policy to O-SBE, eliminates references to minority and women-owned businesses as required by North Carolina Session Law 2026-41. The Policy Committee met and considered these modifications at our August 18, 2026 meeting and voted to recommend fast-track approval by the full board to comply with the recent changes in state law.
We have the first reading for modification to policy F-PRCH, purchasing contracting. I turn to Dr. Hatch.
Madam Chair, this is the first reading of the proposed modification of policy F-PRCH, purchasing contracting. The proposed policy modification does the following. Eliminates references to minority and women-owned businesses as required by North Carolina Session Law 2026-41. The Policy Committee met and considered these modifications at our August 18, 2026 meeting and voted to recommend fast-track approval by the full board to comply with recent changes in state law.
I turn to Vice Chair Rankin for the first reading of the modifications to policy S-ATT, attendance monitoring accounting.
Madam Chair, this is the first reading of the proposed modification of policy S-ATT, attendance monitoring / accounting, as required by North Carolina General Statute 115C-407.45. The proposed policy modification does the following. Defines how students opt into release time religious instruction, outlines time limits and required signatures for off-campus third-party religious instruction during school hours. The Policy Committee met and considered these modifications at our August 18, 2026 meeting and voted to recommend fast-track approval by the full board to comply with recent changes in state law.
I turn to Vice Chair D. Rankin for the first reading for modifications to policy S-HLTH, student health.
Madam Chair, this is the first reading of proposed modification of policy S-HLTH, student health. The proposed policy modification requires information for the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline and the North Carolina Peer Warm Line to be displayed in the following locations: student IDs issued to grades 6 through 12, school website, home screens of school-issued electronic devices, digital or printed school agendas and calendars, documents distributed during suicide awareness activities, student registration documents. The Policy Committee met and considered these modifications at our August 18, 2026 meeting and voted to recommend fast-track approval by the full board to comply with recent changes in state law.
I turn to Vice Chair D. Rankin for the first reading of modifications to policy S-COMM, community involvement in education and retire exhibit S-COMME.
First reading.
Yes.
It's not in your bio this time. Madam Chair, this is the first reading of the proposed modification of policy S-COMM, Community Involvement in Education and Retirement of Exhibit S-COMME, Community Involvement in Education. The proposed modification does the following. Transfers relevant language from Exhibit S-COMME into policy S-COMM, retires Exhibit S-COMME following the transfer of information, updates the appeal process for a denied request. The policy committee met and considered these modifications at our August 18th, 2026 meeting and voted to recommend fast-track approval by the full board to ensure the efficient operation of the school district.
Since there are no speakers for a public hearing, modification to policy O-MWSB, Minority Women Small Business Enterprises Program, I now declare the hearing closed. Since there are no speakers for modification for public hearing for policy F-PRCH, Purchasing Contract, I now declare this hearing closed. Since there are no speakers for the modification to policy S-ATT, Attendance Monitoring Accounting, I now declare this public hearing closed. Since there are no speakers for modification to policy S-HAHLTH, Student Health, I now declare this hearing closed. And since there are no speakers for modification to policy S-COMM, Community Involvement in Education, and retire Exhibit S-COMME, Community Involvement in Education, I declare the hearing closed. I turn to Dr. Hill for the financial statements for July 2026 report.
As presented.
I turn to Dr. Hill for the budget amendments for July 2026 report.
As presented.
I turn to Dr. Hill for the contracts and change orders report for July 26, from July 6, 2026 to August 5th, 2026.
As presented.
I turn to Dr. Hill for the student outcomes focused governance guardrail 1, interim guardrails 1.1, 1.2, and 1.3 progress monitoring report. I turn to Dr. Hill.
As presented.
And the last, well, not the last, but I've turned to Dr. Hill for the student outcomes focused governance goal 1, interim measure 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, progress monitoring report.
I am presenting to you our Goal 1 end-of-year Student Outcomes Focused Governance Monitoring Report. The 5-year goal is to increase the percent of K-2 students scoring at or above benchmark in early literacy. The 5-year goal is to increase the percent of K-2 students scoring at or above benchmark in early literacy as measured by DIBELS from 67% in June 2023 to 91% by June 2029. This is the 5th and final 25-26 report on Goal 1 and is focused on end of year. We call this EOY, Early Literacy Data for our kindergarten through 2nd grade students. Over the next few slides, we will take a look at the performance of K-2 students overall. 76% of K-2 students were at or above DIBELS benchmark at the end of the 25-26 school year. The annual target this year is 83%. Therefore, we must grow 7 percentage points to reach this year's target. This graph shows the percentage of students at or above DIBELS benchmark compared to the CMS annual targets. 76% of K-2 students were at or above benchmark for the 25-26 school year. This is an increase of 9 percentage points over our 22-23 baseline data, and this is an increase of our 4 percentage points over end-of-year 24-25 data. We are in an overall status of progressing. When comparing student performance throughout last year, we see that K-2 beginning of the year performance was 2% higher in 25-26 than it had been the previous year. K-2 middle of the year performance was 5% higher than it had been the previous year, and K-2 end-of-year performance was 4% higher than it had been the previous year. Shown here is student performance by student group, noting that Black, Hispanic, and multilingual student groups showed accelerated rates of improvement over other student groups, Hispanic students improving at over 3 times the rate of traditionally higher performing student groups. Now we will look at the performance of kindergarten students in 25-26. 80% of K-2 students were at or above Dibble's benchmark at the end of the 24-25 school year, for kindergarten, excuse me. The annual target for 26-27 is 89%. Therefore, we must grow by 9 percentage points to reach this year's target. This graph shows a percentage of students at or above Dibble's benchmark compared to the CMS annual targets. Again, 80% of kindergarten students were at or above. This is an increase of 7 percentage points over our 22-23 baseline, and this is an increase of 3 percentage points over our end of year for 24-25, and we are in an overall status of progressing. When comparing student performance throughout the year last year, we see that kindergarten beginning of the year performance was 1% higher than the previous year. Middle of the year performance was 6% higher than the previous year, and end of year performance was 3% higher than the previous year. Shown here is the student performance by student groups. Kindergarten students in multilingual student groups showed an accelerated rate of improvement over other student groups. Now we will take a look at first grade students for last school year. 76% of first grade students were at or above Dibble's. The annual target for the 26-27 school year is 84%. Here you see the same information. This is an increase of 8 percentage points over our 22-23 baseline and an increase of 4 percentage points over the 25-26 school year. We are in an overall status of progressing. When comparing student performance throughout the year last year, we see for first grade, our beginning of the year performance was 1% higher than the previous year. Middle of the year was 3% higher than the previous year, and end of year was 4% higher than the previous year. Shown here is student performance by student group. First grade students in the Black, Hispanic, and multilingual student group showed an accelerated rate of improvement over other student groups, improving at 3 times the rate of other student groups. And finally, we'll take a look at second grade students for the 25-26 school year. 72% of second grade students were at or above Dibble's benchmark at the end of the 25-26 school year. The annual target for the 26-27 school year is 78%. Therefore, we must grow 6 percentage points to reach this year's target. Here you see that we're at 72% for second grade, which is an increase of 10 percentage points over our 22-23 baseline and an increase of 3% over the 25-26 baseline, which puts us at progressing. When comparing students throughout the year last year, we see that second grade beginning of the year performance was 2% higher than it had been in the previous year. Middle of the year was 3% higher than the previous year, and end of the year was 3% higher than the previous year. Shown here is a student performance by student group. Second grade students in the Black, Hispanic, and multilingual student group showed accelerated rates of improvement over other student groups. Now we're going to take a look at Goal 1 strategies. Since the strategic plan was developed, we've been on a journey from implementation to impact. As part of this journey, we have been monitoring the theory of change brick by brick. For 26-27, we will shift that focus. Monitoring the individual brick implementation metrics is now our business as usual. We will this year be focusing on the strategies that span across all of our bricks. Our monitoring report data will focus on the effectiveness of those cross-cutting strategies, prioritizing the performance of students who are not yet at or above benchmark. We will monitor brick by brick implementation metrics and how the strategies that span across the bricks in our monitoring routines, happening twice a month at the cabinet level. This shift will move from reporting brick by brick on individual metrics, and while we still will internally monitor them as a part of our business as usual, we will be focusing on the broader strategies and strategic adjustments that will span across multiple bricks to yield the results we are looking for. Shown here is a summary of our analysis of last year's strategies and what we learned from that work. Also included are the cross-cutting strategies that will cross multiple bricks in the theory of change that will help us assess the entire system represented by our theory of change. These are the strategies we would like to spend lots of time on discussing during our monitoring reports this year. The learning question being addressed is, what district instructional improvements approaches are most consistently associated with sustaining changes in classroom practice, and under what conditions do they produce meaningful results? And at this time, I'll turn to Madam Chair to facilitate the discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Hill. No. Go ahead, board membership, and follow. Seniority.
As I look at this, I see where there's been great growth, but did we hit the targets? As I looked at, even starting with kindergarten, at the end of June 2026, the goal was 85%. We made great growth from past years, beginning of the year, middle of the year, and even end of the year, but we didn't quite hit the target, am I correct? Which was 85%, and we hit 80. I'm just looking at kindergarten there. And so where were we? What happened kind of there that we did show growth, but didn't quite hit that target?
Yes, so thank you for the question. In kindergarten, what we know is, as you stated, we did make great growth. What we have noticed is that we did make great growth. We know that we started a little bit behind in terms of our target from the previous year, so we are always having to accelerate more year over year. When we began this process, we talked a lot about between 3 and 5 percentage points really is Herculean. Yeah. So while we did not meet goal, we are really excited about the growth that we have made. One thing that we do know to be true for kindergarten is that we need to focus even heavily on nonsense word fluency. When we take a look at our students and focusing on those students that are furthest away from the goal, what we know about this data is that our students that were at or above benchmark did well with nonsense word fluency, and those students that did not meet benchmark did not do well with nonsense word fluency. So for kindergarten specifically, we know that's an area that we need to focus on this year.
Thank you. And a follow-up, I kind of saw that same thing with first grade and second grade, making the growth but not quite hitting that target. So I think that the way I'm saying, I guess there's still some work as we continue to work on what the needs are with them as well. And my last kind of the follow-up is I noticed the American Indian students, almost even K1, all of them seem to go down. What do you attribute that to?
Well, when you take a look at that student group, it is extremely low. Oh, yeah. And so I believe there's 60 students, if I'm not mistaken, in K1 and 2. And so when you have just a few students that move, it shows the percentage pops up. Mm-hmm. So that is not necessarily an area that would be statistically significant.
And that's what I wanted to know, because I figured that group wasn't a larger group, but still, yes, looking at that data. Thank you.
Dr. Witherspoon?
Thank you. First of all, I want to say thank you. Thank you for your leadership. You are an outstanding superintendent, and I thank you personally for the ways that you've moved this district forward. I just want to say that to you. It's good to see you. What does the administration believe what do you believe that is the 2 or 3 most significant factors of that cause K-12 to improve? I know kind of different than what board member.
Yes, so the factors that we believe that have caused us to improve is several things. So we have been really focused on putting some specific things in place. We have here, as you can see, what our focus was, and I will turn to slide number 27 on your screen. And so what we've learned here is that, last year we did some work in terms of implementing some district-wide progress monitoring. I talked a lot about the dashboard and how we were progress monitoring on specific subtests. One of the things that we did is we added that data to our district analysis sessions with our leaders, and then also included that in our monthly conversations with our principals and monitored skills block during our learning walks. What we know that we have learned from that is that we are going to continue to focus on the structures that we have in place as well as the tools and resource, and focus on teacher capacity. So we had a lot of discrete things in place that caused that growth to happen, but what we now know is we're going to be looking at all of those different things and how they intersect in order to move students further along.
Thank you.
Board Member Monterey Dubon.
Thank you. Dr. Hill, I'm looking at the slide of what did we learn from 25-26. It is, let me see if I can find the page number for you. I think it's like page
27?
27. Yeah. I would like to further understand and unpack something that I found really interesting. And by the way, I'm really enjoying this presentation format. So whoever worked on it, thank you very much. This is really good. And so my question is, we found in 25-26 that consistent progress monitoring is working. But then I'm reading, progress monitoring didn't consistently predict end-of-year student performance with precision, excuse me. So I'm curious, like, in more detail, what level of like, what kind of data are we using instead? I think I heard you say district. Sorry, you have other data that you use as part of that? I don't want to speak more on that, but I'm just curious, how are we working to improve that data? And if, like, I'm thinking, is this going to impact our SOFG reporting? Like, does this impact our interim goals? Is this the same thing, or are they two separate things?
No, so thank you for the question. So we are going to continue to implement our progress monitoring for our students. We're going to be focusing heavily on those students that are below or well below benchmark, and using that progress monitoring data during our learning walks to evaluate if the engagement strategies and the high yield instructional strategies that are needed for those specific areas that we're progress monitoring are actually happening with those students. So said just a little bit differently, we progress monitored multiple times. You heard me talk a lot last year about focusing on the specific subtest that students would need to be able to make benchmarks. So we monitored that, and we focused heavily on monitoring that. We knew who those students were, and we were monitoring it. But what we know is just monitoring data doesn't necessarily produce the desired results. And so we are now focusing, and that's not to say that we weren't focused on instructional strategies, but it was more so, let's make sure that we monitor. Because from a state perspective, you are only required to do a certain level of monitoring. We know that in order for us to move students forward, we have to dig a little bit deeper and look at that most enabling skill. So basically what we're doing is we're keeping the progress monitoring in place. And in response to our teachers and our school leaders, a request for some more enhanced skills in the dashboard, our accountability team has built that in. So the progress monitoring plus the learning walks plus ensuring that we're continuing to build teacher capacity around those most enabling skills are putting the things together. So said differently, we're doing these different things along the way. Now it's putting them all together and making sure that the system is working to produce the desired results, specifically for those students that are furthest away from the goal.
That's a really helpful clarification. I'll defer.
No,
I think that's
you can have
yeah.
to follow up.
I have
Yeah.
a follow-up, but it's not related to this, so actually I'll wait.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dr. Hedge.
No, it's not a follow-up.
I was gonna say, I have several questions, so am I good?
Yes, it's backwards.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Hill. So I do want to acknowledge the progress, but at the same time, we established a target, we still haven't met it. We have not met the target so far to date. And so when I look at the same slide that Board Member Monterey Duval references, I'm just curious, what 3 kind of disruptive strategies that would we be implementing where we could actually see us hit the target and increase, I think 7 percentage points? Because I'm not understanding what about the strategy would give us the leap that we haven't seen so far.
Well, as I just mentioned, we would be putting the different strategies together that we've been working on year by year, taking the learning that we've had, we know what works, and then implementing them just from the very start of the year would be thing 1. The other thing that we would be focused on is ensuring that, as I mentioned just a minute ago, building teacher capacity. The other thing that we know to be true is, one other strategy that is significantly different than previous is in terms of the level of support that schools have. As you know, we have combined the school performance and curriculum and instruction divisions together. And so now our instructional specialists are with the school performance officers. So our school performance assistant superintendents. So now each school performance area has 2 instructional specialists, and one of them is focused primarily only on K2. The other one would be, or say, just to say pre-K2 if they have pre-K at that school, and the other one would be for 3-5. So that's one of the main strategies that we're using. The other thing that I would say that we are doing is in terms of school improvement planning. Previously, each school had to identify their slice of the pie in order to meet the goal, but we were really looking at the all. This year, what we're doing is embedding that guardrail into individual school improvement planning. So individual schools will know what their slice of the pie is for the students that are in our different groups of students, both ethnic and specialty area, and identify what those, their slice of the pie, and then along with that dashboard, know exactly what subtest, what they need to be focusing on for those students that are furthest away from the goal.
Thank you for that. One additional follow-up. So speaking to kind of the subgroups, I think at the highest level, it tells the different district average tells a story. Then you get down into the subgroup data, but specifically around kindergarten, where we see the overall performance improve 3 points, but Black students were flat, Hispanic students and students with disabilities declined 1 point. So what would be the root cause analysis of what's happening there, and what about the strategy that you just shared would look different for those students?
Sure. So we know that we've got to double down on nonsense word fluency, specifically students that are multilingual. They're learning a different language, thing 1, and they also are learning, they're having to identify sounds and know those sounds that are in English. So you're trying to do 2 things at once for your very youngest learners. What we do know for students that are in kindergarten, that we've got to accelerate learning for kindergarten, because when students start 1st grade, they're obviously further behind than they were in kindergarten. But as I mentioned up on the slide, we have broken the data down by each of the groups of students. And what we know for students that are in kindergarten, as I mentioned earlier, you can see it by different groups. The students that were at or above benchmark did very well with nonsense word fluency, and students that were not did not do well with nonsense word fluency. So we're focusing on nonsense word fluency, which of course is knowing those discrete sounds, identifying the letters, not just the letters, but the sounds that those letters make. So that's one of the things that we know we have to focus on early on, and all of the pieces that I just mentioned earlier together will allow teachers and schools to be able to identify those students. Thank you.
Did you have a backward?
Yeah, it was just a little bit, it was just an observation that I had about nonsense word fluency as well, and I was going to ask about it because I noticed that In some instances, Black students had a more difficult time with it than even Hispanic. And that was just me, like, quickly scanning. But I'm just curious. So when you said that, it was really interesting. And so I'm just curious on, well, actually, I think Charlita already answered my question, so I'm okay.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think I understand it, yeah, I understand now.
Any forward questions?
Yes, I do. I'm in between slide 25 and 27, kind of two-part question. When it comes to, on 27, I know the learning walks are a part of our strategy. Which one of the bricks on our theory of change, who's responsible for that particular the learning walks? And then also a part of that, it states that when it comes to one of the things that we'll be doing moving forward, we'll be focusing on the students below or well below benchmark and meeting those needs. Can you talk through, being that we have so many students within K2 that meet that criteria, but in each student is different, the needs that may be met, what type of strategy will be put in place to be able to meet the individual needs of all those students with their different needs?
So the answer to the first question is the school performance assistant superintendents are the ones who are responsible for the learning walks.
Okay.
And then the second question is related to our multi-tiered system of support. And the multi-tiered system of support is basically your core instruction should be meeting the needs of about 80% of your students. And then, of course, 20% of those students would either need supplemental or intensive support. And if you would take a look at our overall, and then even if you take a look at overall, and then also by each of the levels, you'll see that 76% of our students were at or above. So when you talk about core instruction, and if the core instruction is meeting that 80% based on that national MTSS triangle, we're super close to knowing that the core that we're doing is providing we're meeting the needs of those students with core. So in terms of supplemental and intensive strategies, you'll see this instructional impact tool here, and that is cutting across what we're taking a look at in terms of student engagement, and then specifically what that student engagement looks like for all of our students in terms of ethnic or students that have different needs.
Could you go to 25 really quick, slide 25? Yeah. I know you said the performance, so what would they fall, anyone, so no one on here in particular, any of the bricks on it aren't responsible for the learning walks. It's the performance area, that's who does the walks?
I'm sorry, what's the question?
I was saying, is there if they're not, then that's fine. Is there any group of one of our bricks that are on here for our theory of change responsible for the learning walks? Was that doesn't fall here?
Sure. So the specialist, the master teachers, and the high-quality professional development, high-quality teachers, high-quality core instruction, all of that lives with the school performance assistant superintendents. So that would be the leadership group that would be responsible for that. So you have the instructional specialists that are now with the SPAs. The master teachers are in the classrooms. At the school level, we have a literacy and math for every school. So those are assigned to the school, but the specialists work side by side with those master teachers and the classroom teachers to provide the high-quality professional development. So in terms of the who is responsible for creating those learning walks, it would be our assistant superintendents of school performance. They're the ones leading that work, while at the same time building the capacity of everybody on their team.
Okay, thank you. One more follow-up if I could. Because, I mean, the protocol's been established, so. And then I was looking at the theory of change for professional learning with the master teachers and the specialists, and it's talking about professional learning aligned to teacher-leader competencies. Are those some of the things that they focus on when with the learning walks? Is that something separate? Is that more around professional development? Both. The one it's on slide 48. We have 48. It's a list. It's a list of yes. These are these things that are a part of the professional development, or are these some of the things that are being observed when the learning walks are taking place?
This is our theory of change for professional learning, and so the instructional specialists and master teachers are receiving ongoing professional learning, and that's aligned to the teacher competencies, so they can support the teachers in the classroom.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Board Member Stone.
Thank you. First off, Dr. Witherspoon said it much more eloquently than I did, but I'm glad you're back too. He's great. Also, I think it was in the supplement stuff that we're looking at right now, it was page 32, I think. Let's see if it's the right one. Yes, that's it. I wanted just to mention that because I think it shows a pretty valuable comparison between what the challenges that CMS faces and how other districts and other states, because we're using a national user database, and then we've got NCDPI data, and then we have CMS, and we are doing real well on that one, I think. So thank you. I just wanted to make sure that was brought to everybody's attention because that demonstrates a lot of hard work from a lot of people. My question is, having had an experience where I taught 3 successive grades, I could see from year to year. So I knew I could see them right in front of me and figure out, okay, they got nonsense word fluency challenges in 1st grade. Well, I know that's going to help me with 2nd grade. So it was very helpful to see longitudinal data that way in the classroom. So I'm wondering if there's a way that we could start kind of comparing stuff to see where these kindergartners fall as 1st graders. Are they continuing to struggle with the same kinds of issues that prohibit them from progressing? I was just curious, is that part of any kind of conversations as far as data?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for that. So I just want to thank you for calling this out. I appreciate it. So one of the things that I think is important for the board and the viewing public, everyone here to realize is DIBELS is a nationally normed assessment. Mm-hmm. And here you see the comparison of Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools in blue, NCDPI, which means every other school district in the state, and then and there's 115 districts, and then the national user base, because again, this is a national norm assessment. So you will see on this slide for kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, and 3rd grade, Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools had more students scoring at or above benchmark than the rest of the nation and others in the state across the graph. And then on the next slide, if that's true, of course, Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools would have fewer students scoring well below than the rest of the nation and others in the state across all grade levels. So I think that's just really important to stamp. So thank you for pointing that out. In terms of the DIBELS assessment, it is on a continuum.
Right.
And so when students are taking their assessments, even if they are in 1st grade, and we talked about the students that were below or well below,
right.
That data, of course, travels. So just because a student is 1st grade and they're supposed to be benchmarking on specific skills such as word reading fluency, which would be high-frequency words. Mm-hmm. If students are not there yet, they're still going to be, students are still going to be pushed towards that word reading fluency. But if they were not where they need, if they were well below benchmark in nonsense word fluency in kindergarten, that then would follow them up to first grade. So, and that kind of gets to what Mr. Rankin was saying earlier in terms of students that would be identified for supplemental or intensive support.
Sure, I'm familiar with that. Can I have a follow-up, please? What I'm thinking about, though, is having a different way to actually check against our own efforts to say, oh, wow, you know, this year, by putting in these strategies, these things and stuff, it moves the needle a little bit further. So it gives us a way to look at student performance, considering, to me, growth is important about where the, you know, of course it is, but it would be another opportunity to find the challenges or whatever they're facing and just to check ourselves.
Yes, and so I apologize that I did not catch the complete essence of your question, so I apologize about that. So what we do know is that we are really focused on a relaunch and focusing really in on our skills block in terms of that core instruction that happens during the 15 and 20 minutes, but then really being intentional about what is happening at the teacher table when the teacher is calling those groups, as well as what students are doing at the independent level. So what we're looking for in our instructional impact tool is what are the specific verbs that students, like things that students should be doing, focusing, narrowing in on those verbs on that instructional impact tool, and then seeing is that actually happening specifically with whatever skill students should be working on. Because if we're not focusing on the verb of what should be happening, are we actually seeing it, then there's a little bit of a mismatch.
All right, thank you.
But I just want to stamp that we are incredibly, incredibly proud of our teachers and our students for the amazing work that they've done, and they will continue to do. I just want to say that.
Thank you. I'm proud of them, too.
Was there another question over there? I feel like I missed one.
I just had one last question, going forward. I'm on the appendix, I think this is page 61, and I'm just looking at, because I know how important it is for families, if we can help at this age is very important with K2. And so these high-frequency words, being able to send this home and making sure parents are supporting. And I remember with mine back, getting these, well, they were flashcards then, but how was that working? How's that going? What are schools doing to ensure that parents are able to help their young learners at this stage?
Yes, so our family engagement team has done a couple of things. They've taken all of this work and have turned it into specific family nights in terms of presentations, things like that, that we can send to schools and they can just use it turnkey, that's focused on these specific areas. The other thing that we are heavily focused on is back in the day when I taught kindergarten and first grade, it was high-frequency words. Now we call it word reading fluency, to be fancy. But here are a list of all the words that students need to know and need to know them automatically for kindergarten, first, and second grade. So ensuring that students are mastering those, and those are things that parents can do at home. Our partnerships team is really going to be focusing with our partnerships. So any opportunity that we have to really focus on the word reading fluency, because what we know is if a child's brain, if they're recognizing these words and they can read them like this, then it doesn't slow down their fluency when they get to a word that is not a high frequency word, and they can use a lot of their brain power in terms of decoding that word, and then that speeds up their fluency, which then impacts their comprehension.
Right, and that's so true, thank you. I've seen that with a 22-month-old grandbaby. Thank you.
She reading already?
Yeah, she's counting, she can count to 10, just to let you know.
I do have one question, and I'm referring, the information is not on slide 27. We do spend a lot of time, and rightfully so, talking about those that need the most help. But I know one of the things that, you have talked about is raising the floor and the ceiling. So are there particular strategies that the district is implementing in terms of raising the ceiling for those that are the high performers?
Yes, so everything that we do with the dashboards, with the data that we collect, we are not satisfied with students staying where they are. Specifically in North Carolina, we're not just evaluated or held accountable for students meeting the mark, we're also held accountable for students growing. So we all know and understand that we are not just focused on, like I said, meeting the mark, but growing students. And so in the instructional impact tool, there are tools and resources for teachers to know that if your students are at or above benchmark in this subtest, how are they performing on the next subtest in order to accelerate their learning?
That makes sense. Thank you. Any other questions? Forward, yes.
Yes. So one of the things that we often talked about is the high-quality teacher is central here. So could you actually just define the high-quality teacher, since it's one of our primary strategies, and how are we measuring that and making sure that students have equitable access to high-quality teachers?
So it would be these teacher competencies, and what slide is this, 49? So this is a look at these teacher competencies, and so we are ensuring that we are building the capacity of our teachers through our teacher leadership roles, which of course would be with our specialists, with our master teachers, and then of course the teachers that are there in the classroom. So our professional development is heavily focused on these 11 areas that you see here. It's simple, but it's also complex, and what we know is that if we strengthen the knowledge and the leadership capacity of those who coach teachers, then we're ultimately going to impact the teachers that are in the classroom every single day. So again, the model that we have of making sure that teachers have both side-by-side coaching in the classroom, but even before that, strong support at the PLC planning level just continues to build the capacity of our teachers. In terms of ensuring that all students have access to a high-quality teacher, one of the things that I love to call out and remind our community, well before I got here as superintendent, we had implemented the opportunity culture model, which is ensuring that we are building the leadership capacity of our teachers through things like the multi-classroom leader, our extended impact teachers. I had an opportunity to visit several EIT classrooms today. And so basically that whole model is focused on ensuring that we're building the leadership capacity of our teachers. So that model has been in place. And I just think the team, specifically our retention, recruitment, and talent development team, has really accelerated that program, where now we have the opportunity culture model in all of our schools.
And so have we done the analysis to look at our students that may not be where we want them to be, and kind of the ratio of those students that have the kind of certified high-quality teacher versus not?
Yeah, so one of the things that I do want to point out is we're not necessarily looking at Crystal Hill is assigned to Dr. Hatch as her teacher. So you might be my teacher, but Miss London might be coaching you in the way that teachers might be held accountable is Miss London might be coaching you, and she might be coaching Miss Monterey Duvall. So how I am performing as a student really is reflective of Miss London's coaching of you all. So basically what that means is we are able to ensure high-quality instruction for our students by the coaching model that we have in place. And that might be the classroom teacher that's an extended impact teacher that has more students in their classroom, or it might be the opportunity that we have for a teacher leader to be coaching and supporting those teachers. So the model that we have is to help build teachers' leadership capacity regardless of their years of experience and regardless of where they fall on the continuum. What we do know about teaching is you get better, and we get better through coaching. And we're strong believers in that coaching model. We've invested heavily in that coaching model, and therefore, that's how we're able to see those results.
So then I think said differently, my question would be, we looked at the coaches, we're holding the coaches accountable
Yes.
to the output and the results of the students. And we are moving and matching coaches to make sure that there isn't a deficit somewhere in a particular area or with particular groups of students.
Yes, so previously, in the original opportunity culture model, in order for teachers to remain in those roles, it was tagged to how outcomes for students. We went away from that for a little minute previous to my tenure, but we've brought that back. So there is a close look at folks that are in the in that model and how they are supporting outcomes of students.
And I think my last question would be around, going back to my very first question around the 76% target to 83% this coming year. I'm always going to ask about whether or not we're like fully resourced and funded. Are there things the boards need to be aware of? Maybe like changes to student-teacher ratios for K through 2 or anything like that that could impact us achieving the 83% target that the board has set forth?
Public schools are grossly underfunded. That is not a secret. Public schools are grossly underfunded. And you all know that we receive the majority of our funding from the state. Our county has been extremely gracious in providing local funds to supplement that. And then, of course, we take advantage of any federal funding that we can. So to ask me if we are fully resourced, the answer would be no. But what I would say is that the resources that we do have, we are maximizing those resources to get the desired results. And if I may go back to the slides that were shared earlier, I would say that there's evidence that the resources and the way that we're using those resources are getting the desired results compared to both state and national results.
So are there any kind of risk or issues that you would want to put to the board as it relates to making the 7% jump?
Not
that
at
would
this
need to make?
time.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, I'll defer to you first.
Thank you. I want to go off of Board Member Hatch's question with teachers, but how exactly does the district gather and weigh student feedback and performance in school to know or evaluate whether a teacher is meeting those high-quality benchmarks?
How do we gather student feedback?
Student performance, at least. So what exactly do we look at number and statistic-wise to know that a teacher is meeting those benchmarks?
So every student takes an assessment. This assessment is called DIBELS. It's given 3 times a year, beginning of the year, middle of the year, and end of the year. And between each of those assessments, we are progress monitoring based on what's called a subtest. So in the slide deck, there is an explanation of those specific subtests. From that data, it is collected digitally, and they're really quick, really quick assessments. And so if you're interested, you can go here. You can push play. There's a little video. You see the students that are sitting there, the teacher with the little iPad that's ticking away. It's a 1-minute, very quick assessment. That information is then uploaded into a dashboard, and it puts students in groups based on being well below, at, or well above benchmark. and it is also then divided by the subtest. So then from a state requirement, from the Read to Achieve assessment, we are required to progress monitor a certain amount of times based on a specific subtest. However, in our district, we've gone a grain size deeper to take a look at what subtests we need to monitor that would be the most enabling skill to get students to the next level. So that data is all collected. It is, our accountability team has built additional benchmarks at the request of teachers and principals. That information all filters into a dashboard. And then monthly, our leaders gather along with their instructional leadership teams to take a look at that data. And then weekly, teachers are in our PLCs, our professional learning community meetings, to take a look at that data. And then they're using that information along with the instructional impact tool to know that these group of students need to work on this thing. This is the highest yield instructional strategy. The students are going to be grouped here, and so when they're at the teacher table, they're doing this work. When they're at the independent table, they're doing this work. And then our school performance assistant superintendents and their teams, along with principals, master teachers, go into the classrooms to take a look at what is actually happening, and then all of those data pieces are triangulated, and then the discrete moves are made the very next week. So a lot of data collected, a lot of information looked at, and then the other thing that I would like to mention is then also based on that data, if students are not responding to the instruction, there's always a question of why students aren't responding to that instruction. And there's lots of different reasons why students may not be responding, but most importantly, we're really focused on building the capacity of our teachers.
Okay, thank you.
I just have one last question, particularly about strategy. It made me think in your responses to the other questions about setting the benchmarks. When you're talking about raising the ceiling and the floor, can you explain, like, how do we know, what is the strategy that the benchmarks are set for? I believe that you said they're set for a student. The teachers know they should meet this benchmark. How do you set it that we know that it's a push? Does that question make sense? Like that it's a push for the student and it is challenging them, whether they're at the bottom half or the top half or in the middle?
Well, the benchmarks are set nationally because they're nationally normed tests, so we don't set the benchmark. However, what we do is take a look at students and how they're performing. And so we know if a student is at or above, we automatically know what that next subtest would be that students need to be working on. And when we're collecting that data, it gives us that information.
And so the data is, I mean, it's challenging. I guess that's probably the better question. Like, we know that it's challenging the student or the teacher to assist the student in not just meeting a mark, but exceeding it.
Yes, and our data tells us that because
Okay.
last year we exceeded growth in all areas.
Okay.
So it would be impossible to exceed growth if you weren't moving all groups of students forward.
All right. Any other questions? All right. There being none, I'll turn to our action items for this. Oh, sorry, superintendent's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and happy new school year to everyone. Today we kicked off the 26-27 school year with lots of smiles, hugs, and high fives. I'd like to say a very special thank you to Board Member London and Board Member Stone for joining us or joining me today. I started my day bright and early. Well, really wasn't bright, it was dark outside, at the Downs Road Transportation Garage, where we met with media partners as part of our transportation fleet to hit the road. Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools operates the largest transportation system in the state. From there, I visited South Mecklenburg High School, In Haven Elementary, South Charlotte Middle, Beverly Woods Elementary, and Dilworth Elementary Schools. It is wonderful to have our schools and classrooms come alive again. Our teachers did not waste any time leading engaging lessons and setting expectations for the year. And our cafeteria and playgrounds were filled with laughter and chatter from students greeting old friends and making new ones. Here are a few of the highlights from my day. I had the chance to greet students as they arrived at South Meck High School this morning. I also saw the new construction and ongoing construction happening at that school. There were stops in several classrooms at End Haven Elementary. I heard teachers reminding students that mistakes are great during their morning meetings. I also listened to Ms. Whitford read First Day Jitters to her class. At South Charlotte Middle School, I had the opportunity to see the Media Center's new furniture and flexible seating, all funded through a Jimmy Johnson Champions grant. The Media Center also had a book vending machine where students can get books to read as a prize. Very cool. In a math class, Miss Les was teaching fractions, and she also talked a lot about it's okay to make mistakes and a growth mindset. In Miss Copade's ELA class, which is English Language Arts, she talked about text-dependent questions. During my visit to Beverly Woods Elementary, I visited a kindergarten class where they wrote about why they are special. And then I also got to see the Bear Battle, which is a weekly challenge that takes place on the school news, and it is intentional to connect students with administrators and staff. And I also had the opportunity to visit an extensions classroom. My final stop of the day was at the new, beautiful Dilworth Elementary School. I visited several of our special area classes. Board Member Stone, Dr. Balknight, Principal Crawford, and I played drums during a music class. That was a lot of fun. Students practiced reading quarter notes and quarter rest notes and read rhythm during school chants and cheers. Over in Mr. Taylor's PE class, students were learning about motor skills. And I also had the opportunity to visit the Media Center with Ms. Ivers reading a book to students. Students in art class were working on chalk drawings, and just a great time at Dilworth. Overall, we did encounter a few hiccups with transportation, but as the largest public transportation system in the state, not public, we are the largest transportation system in the state. We are confident we'll be able to resolve those issues during the first week of school as drivers become more familiar with their routes and traffic patterns. All in all, it's been a fantastic first day of school and a terrific start to the beginning of the 26-27 school year. Thank you to all of our staff for working so hard to make it great.
Thank you, Dr. Hill. Now we're moving to the action items for this evening. The first one, I turn to Board Member Dr. Hatch for the recommended approval of modification of policy O-MWSB, Minority Women Small Business Enterprises Program. As this motion comes out of Policy Committee, there's no need for a second.
All right, Madam Chair, I move to approve the proposed modification of policy O-MWSBE, Minority Women Small Business Enterprises Program. The proposed policy modification does the following. Changes the title of the policy to O-SBE, eliminates references to minority and women-owned businesses as required by North Carolina Session Law 2026-41. The Policy Committee met and considered these modifications at our August 18, 2026 meeting and voted to recommend fast-track approval by the full board to comply with recent changes in state law.
Dr. Hill, would you like to speak to your motion? What'd I say?
Yeah.
Oh, Lord.
Yes, I would.
Dr. Hatch, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, Madam Chair. I am making this motion because we have an obligation to ensure our policies comply with state law, but I also want to be clear about what changing the words in our policy does not change. Our commitment to ensuring that local, small, minority, women-owned businesses and historically underrepresented businesses have a fair opportunity to compete for CMS business should not disappear because terminology in a policy changes. We do not need policy to do the right thing. Within the boundaries of the law, we can still make our procurement processes accessible. We can still remove unnecessary barriers. We can still broaden our outreach. We can still make sure businesses know about our opportunities and how to understand how to compete. And we can still examine who is and who isn't participating in our procurement ecosystem. So I will support these required policy changes, but I also want to reaffirm my commitment to ensuring that our public dollars create opportunity for our community. The language may have to change, but our commitment to access and opportunity does not.
Thank you. Any other comments from board members? Vice Chair Rankin?
Thank you. Briefly, I just want to say the continued attack against public education, the continued attack against diversity, equity, and inclusion, especially coming from Raleigh, is counterproductive. And I think that I just want to make sure we understand how important it is for us to put the right people in place when it's time for us to go out and vote and know who's supporting these type of statutes that are being put in place. Thank you.
Seeing none, I think we're ready for the question. All those, we have a motion before us that has been properly made. All those in favor of the motion as presented? 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. All those opposed? Motion carries. Next action item for this evening, I turn to Board Member Hatch for the recommended approval of modification of policy F-PRCH, purchasing contracting.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the proposed modification of policy F.PRCH, purchasing contracting. The proposed policy modification does the following. It eliminates references to minority and women-owned businesses as required by North Carolina Session Law 2026-41. The policy committee met and considered these modifications at our August 18, 2026 meeting and voted to recommend fast-track approval by the full board to comply with recent changes in state law.
This motion comes out of committee, does not require a second. Dr. Hatch, would you like to speak to your motion?
Same comments apply, Madam Chair.
Any other comments? Yes.
Yeah, I think that this is a big waste of time. I feel for my colleagues that had to work on this. This took a lot of effort. The public is probably going to be really upset with us, and I want y'all to know that my colleagues here, our team, we have to follow these laws. And so to echo what Vice Chair Rankin said, your civic duty is crucial in these moments to help us not have to do these things, because the removing minority, removing women, like that has nothing to do with children. And so I wish that some of this energy will be redirected into other things, like not like these vouchers and all of these other things that are just a poor, very poor use of taxpayer money. And I'm very upset as a person that my taxpayer money is going to this. Thank you.
Any other comments? Seeing none, I believe we're ready for the question. The motion has been properly made for policy F, changes to policy F-PRCH, person contracting. All those in favor by show of hands? 1, 2, 3, 4. All those opposed? So motion fails, Madam Clerk. All right. Next motion is for recommended approval of modification of policy S-ATT, attendance monitoring, accounting. As this motion is coming out of committee, it doesn't require second, and return to Vice Chair Rankin.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the proposed modification of policy S-ATT, attendance monitoring, accounting, as required by NCGS 115C-407.45. The proposed policy modification does the following. Defines how students opt into release time religious instruction, outlines time limits and required signatures for off-campus third-party religious instruction during school hours. The policy committee met and considered these modifications at our August 18, 2026 meeting and voted to recommend fast-track approval by the full board to comply with recent changes in state law.
Vice Chair Rankin, would you like to speak to your motion?
No, thank you.
Any other comments? Board Member Stone.
Yes. I am a firm believer in separation of church and state. Any kind of church, any kind of religious belief belongs to the person, not to the corporate or the group. This disturbs me that this feels like this is a violation of civil rights. I also think that people who, it's also going to create an impediment for these kids getting pulled out of school for 4 hours or up to 4 hours a week. That's 4 hours of lost instruction. And I'm just opposed to the whole idea of doing something like this based on the fact that this is the United States and it was in our Constitution. So that's what I'm saying. Thank you.
Any other comments? Board Member Monterey Duval.
Yeah, I just don't know what this has to do with education. I don't get it at all. This is very troubling, deeply concerning to me. And I apologize to my constituents that we're being put in this position. I really, really do. Because this impacts everyone. All these things, they impact us all, and they have unintended consequences. So when you write to me, I hope you're writing to the people up in the state capitol as well.
Dr. Hatch?
Madam Chair, point of clarification, directed at Vice Chair Rankin, Chair of the Policy Committee. This policy is, from my understanding, to provide an avenue for students who have religious activities to be able to leave school excused without explanation, and no barriers, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Any other comments or questions? All right, I think we're ready for the question. We have a motion before us for approval of modifications to policy S-ATT, attendance monitoring accounting. All those in favor by show of hands. All those opposed? The motion carries. I turn to Vice Chair Rankin to make the motion for modifications to policy S-HLTH, student health. As this comes out of committee, it does not require a second.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the proposed modification of policy S-HLTH, student health. The proposed policy modification requires contact information for the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline and the North Carolina Peer Warm Line to be displayed in the following locations: student IDs issued to grades 6 through 12, school website, home screens of school-issued electronic devices, digital or printed school agendas and calendars, documents are distributed during suicide awareness activities, student registration documents. The Policy Committee met and considered these modifications at our August 18th, 2026 meeting and voted to recommend fast-track approval by the full board to comply with recent changes in state law.
Vice Chair Rankin, would you like to speak to your motion?
No, thank you.
Any other comments? Board Member Haynes.
If it helps to save one life, that's a good thing.
Any other comments? There's a motion been properly made for the approval of modification to policy S-HLTH, student health. All those in favor by show of hands. Unanimous, Madam Clerk. The next motion is for Vice Chair Rankin. It is coming out of the committee. It does not require a second. It's the recommended approval of modification of policy S-COMM, community involvement in education, and retire exhibit S-COMME, community involvement in education.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the proposed modifications of policy S-COMM, community involvement in education, and retirement of exhibit S-COMME, community involvement in education. The proposed modification does the following: transfers relevant language from exhibit S-COMME into policy S-COMM, retires exhibit S-COMME following the transfer of information, updates the appeal process for denied requests. The Policy Committee met and considered these modifications at our August 18th, 2026 meeting and voted to recommend fast-track approval by the full board to ensure the efficient operation of the school district.
Would you like to speak to your motion?
No, thank you.
Are there any other comments? Being none, the motion has been properly made for approval of modification of policy S-COMM, community involvement in education, and retire exhibit S-COMME, community involvement in education. All those in favor by show of hands. It's unanimous, Madam Clerk. I turn to Dr. Hatch to make the motion for investigation process review and board governance recommendations.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that the board prepare a summary report regarding the recently completed investigation process to be completed on or before the end of September. The report shall be consistent with all applicable personnel, confidentiality, and legal requirements.
Its scope shall address the investigation process, key lessons learned, and recommended improvements to governance, policy procedure, and oversight with the aim of promoting transparency, accountability, and public trust without disclosing any legally protected or confidential information.
A second.
A motion's been made, it's been properly second. Is there any discussion? Would you like to speak to your motion, Dr. Hatch?
Yes, Madam Chair. I want to briefly explain why I'm bringing this motion forward. Throughout this investigation, we asked our employees, families, and community to trust the board. We said there was a process. We acknowledged there were things we could not discuss while that process was underway, and we asked the public to be patient while we did the work. I understood that then, and I still do. But now that the investigation has concluded, I believe we have a responsibility to close the loop. I am not asking this board to disregard confidentiality requirements or release information prohibited by law. Those protections matter. But confidentiality does not have to mean silence. There's a space between releasing everything and saying nothing, and North Carolina law actually provides a process for navigating that space. I am not asking us to work around the law. I'm asking us to use the process the law gives us, and I believe this situation warrants that consideration. The investigation required significant board attention and public resources, and it created uncertainty for our employees, family, and community. If there is information we can lawfully share about what was learned, the public should know it. If there are recommendations for this board, the public should know them. If there are policies, procedures, governance practices, or other systems that should change as a result, the public should know that as well. Because accountability isn't simply completing an investigation. Accountability is what we do with what we learned. This is not about relitigating the investigation or any individual. It is about the institution and the public's confidence in it. I have said throughout my service that every seat on this board belongs to the people, and I believe that means providing as much transparency as the law permits, not only when the information is easy to share, but especially when it isn't. We ask the community to trust the process, and now I believe maintaining that trust requires us to show them to the full extent legally permissible what that process produced and what happens next. For those reasons, I'm bringing this motion forward and asking my colleagues to support it.
Any other comments, questions? Board Member Haynes.
I just want to say thank you, Charlita, for bringing this motion forward. I think it's important for us to be transparent with the public. That's not always a comfortable position. You can always bury yourself in a vote and confidentiality, but we all know that in this day and time, we need for people who are making policy and making decisions to be upfront with us as they can. I hold myself to a very high standard when it comes to these things. Sometimes I'm a little too direct, but at the same time, I just want the public to know and the people of District 2 to know that no matter how it looks, I am willing to show what we've done, how we've done it to the best of our ability, and like Dr. Hatch said, not to break any laws or anything. So I'm grateful for you, Dr. Hatch, for bringing this forward and giving me something that I could really raise my hand to.
Board Member Monterey Devon.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Hatch, and I want to thank my constituents for supporting me always. And like Dr. Hatch said, you know, we kind of said, you got to trust us on this, and it can be difficult to trust elected officials. It can be difficult to trust the system. And so the reason I support this and this level of transparency within our capability is because I believe our constituents deserve to have as much information as possible so that they can feel trust and confidence in the school system and their leaders. And I would support being able to close this loop in a way that is a happy path forward so that we can continue working on the things that matter most and moving the agenda forward and doing what's best for kids. So as long as this is accomplishing that, I'm happy to do that so that we can move forward and then our constituents can move forward, because we have a lot of work to do this school year. Thank you.
Any other comments? I think we're ready. Oh, yeah. Oh, sorry. Oh. What? Vice Chair Rankin.
I want to thank Dr. Hatch for bringing this motion forward. I also agree that transparency is needed. But I also want to state that it's never been my intent, I can't speak for everyone else on the board, but it's never been the intent to withhold any information about this process. We are bound by law about certain things we can talk about. And it's always been my intent to be, when in the appropriate time was to come, that we would be transparent. And that would be my goal and my opportunity as a board member to do that. So thanks for bringing this forward, and I will support this.
Dr. Witherspoon?
Yeah, thank you. I 100% believe in transparency, and at the core of this, I actually believe in it. But I'm abstaining because this, just today, it was really first conversation that we really had about it. And I really want to fully understand kind of the what all is involved in this. Even some of the language that we're using as we're sitting here is a little concerning. But I'm 100% for transparency, but I would like to just have some further discussions on what exactly I'm voting on. And I don't have that information at this point. As I said, today's first conversation that we had about this. And so if we move forward, I hope that we can have more in-depth conversations about it. So just for not having that information on what I'm saying.
Was that another comment, board membership?
Yeah, I understand the need to be transparent and to always look at the process. But I do want to also make sure that we have looked at what we need to do, what we can do, and what we can't do. And I think that was in discussion today, and so I am still torn between making sure we don't do or go outside of what we can as a board, and we also support what is needed for this district and going forward as we welcome back our superintendent. I want us to make sure we do what is right on both sides, what the board can do, and then how we support what we can do. So.
She got to go first.
Yeah.
Go ahead. You haven't spoken, so.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Thank you so much. So I also support being transparent and communicating, what can be to ensure public trust. I want to make sure that, whatever is shared is really around governance, accountability, process integrity, and the stewardship of public dollars. So I don't know if you're going to share more that can kind of help to confirm that. That would be helpful for me.
Yes, Dr. Hatch.
So, part of the discussion is for us to shape that together and openly. And this is where we would shape it. So this is not designed in a vacuum or behind closed doors. So if there's any limitations to what shouldn't be shared, I think we should put it on the table. If there are things that we want to make sure is included, if there's words that need to be clarified, let's define those together here.
Vice Chair Rankin?
Yeah, I think for me, hearing the motion, it states it's focusing on what can and cannot be shared based on the law. So I'm not sure if we're worried about we're going to expose different things or say some things that's against the law. But I think that for me, the motion clearly states that we're going to follow the law, but it's also focusing on transparency and making sure in the process we're not talking about doing it or sharing any information that we cannot. So that's why I'm going for it. I think it explains everything that we can and cannot do.
I think she was
I'm going to get Stone first because she hasn't spoken.
Thank you. I had another life before I went back into a classroom, and these kinds of things are not that unusual. And I think that the information that the investigation has yielded will help us be better. Working with Dr. Hill, sharing that information with her will enable her to better lead our district.
Board Member London?
So I think going back to what you said about, what are the types of things? So I think, some of the questions that we've received are total dollar amount that's spent on this.
Also, what was the process that was used? So is that the overarching, like this is about the board, process, ensuring public trust, so that we can move forward together? I think that's what I'm looking for, is like a little bit more tangible, like what are those the things? Like we would direct our general counsel to prepare something for us, a report on the time frame, dollar amount, those types of things.
So my question to you is, just to facilitate this, is do you have an amendment you would like to make to the motion at this time, or we need to hear from, you trying to amend the motion? It's just a question.
Yeah, just a
comment.
question.
Okay.
Yeah, question.
Dr. Hatch?
I think I can restate this so we can have clarity, but then I think the thing to think about is there something specific that you don't want included. So its scope shall address the investigation process, key lessons learned, and recommended improvements to governance, policy, procedure, and oversight with the aim of promoting transparency, accountability, and public trust without disclosing any legally protected or confidential information. So if there's something that you want to make sure is included, I would love a friendly amendment to the motion for that. And if there's anything that you want excluded that is not covered in legally protected or confidential information.
I think I'm okay with the terminology that's used in the motion. It will be helpful to be able to discuss this and review it along the way before the end of September.
Okay. Board Member Haynes?
I think we may be getting caught up with the idea of doing something that's a little scary for some people. But in my mind, once we have to agree that we're going to release these items to the highest legality that we can and for what we can. And then there is a process of determining what that looks like.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So I think for me, I want to honor what people have to say and their thoughts, but at the same time, without all the razzle-dazzle, let's go ahead and release this information to the public. We've already overstated that we're releasing this information. We're not going to release information we shouldn't, and it's the start of a process. And so, whatever, if you have a disagreement with it, say what it is so we can move forward and get the public what they've been asking for and what they should have.
Vice Chair Rankin?
I just want to make sure we're not actually trying to put the report together right now here at the dais. Like, that's not the purpose of this motion. The purpose of this motion is to show that we as a board agrees that information should be released, being transparent with our community and our students and our families and everyone, but at the same time, making sure that we're following the law and making sure that anything that we do release is not unallowable according to the general statute. I think that's really all we're saying, is that we agree, if you support this, that information should be released. And then from there, we'll follow our normal procedures when we receive reports like anything else. When we receive our reports from on progress monitoring, we have opportunity to review the reports and ask questions and give feedback. That would be the same process we'll follow with any other report that we receive.
Board Member London?
That's helpful. That's what I'm suggesting. I don't have a disagreement with it. I'm suggesting, I wanted to confirm the parameters are kind of guardrails, which yes, it's in the motion, and that we will be able to review and have dialogue.
And what did we say the timeline is on this and how we're doing this?
The motion as written, it says that this will be completed and prepared for the public by the end of September.
End of September.
Any other comments or questions? Dr. Witherspoon.
And I'm just going to say this. It is my personal opinion that we should have already made a statement to the public. And so for me to sit here at this moment, for me, this is a performative action for me. I'm not speaking about saying how anybody else should feel about it. I'm talking about for myself personally. And so, again, I'm 100% for full transparency. Again, some of the language even that we use to make a quick decision about what that is and what that looks like in this moment, even without counsel. You look good over there.
She's on.
Oh, she's online.
She's
Yeah,
on,
yeah,
yes.
but for those reasons, and just not having that have a counsel, just wanting information, I want to work with my board towards this. But without full information that I need, I can't vote yes. I will abstain.
Board Member Haynes?
I'll be very brief. I think I'm having a little bit of difficulty understanding that, because when you are leading a district of our size, or you're leading in Mecklenburg County, you have to be decisive, and you also have to be able to think quickly sometimes about what it is you need to do. And the reality of it is the public has been waiting for this information. We all know that there was a process in terms of when this process started, when it ended, and to the best of our ability, we're bringing this forward now. And there's never a bad time to do the right thing. Now, if we want to say it's performative or whatever, I'm glad you spoke for yourself.
Thank you.
But also, I want the public to know that we have deliberated this. We have been trying to understand what the best road and course possible is. And it's a short frame of time, but also, when you are a leader, sometimes you do have to make a very decisive decision, a careful decision, but you may not have 2 or 3 years to think about it. You may have to go ahead and just do the right things.
Are there any other, yes.
Okay. I couldn't agree with you more, Board Member Haynes, and I think that this is definitely imperative that people know how we feel about this. As the Board of Education, this is a very controversial step to take, but it's important that what you and both Board Member Witherspoon are saying is that it may come off as a certain way, and I just want to say, as somebody who, I guess, experiences both the public stance on this or perspective, that it's important to take the time and discussion in releasing this to the public now that we are doing so, because I want people to know, I mean, as a student in CMS, I'm sick and tired of hearing that sometimes the board may not care, and I sit here every day and I see nothing but effort, persistent effort that the board goes through. I mean, you guys constantly actually make the effort to listen to students and teachers, and it just doesn't always look like that, and I'm very happy to be a part of that. And so I guess what I'm saying is that we do have to acknowledge that this was a major financial expense on our end, and I think as long as we just take the time to word it properly before releasing it, which I'm sure you guys will do, we'll just really strengthen the efforts that the board takes to really care about students. So yeah, just keep doing what you're doing.
Any other comments or questions? Vice Chair Rankin?
I just want to state this really quickly. There's a statute that's in place that talks, that we have to follow a certain process in order for that identifies what can be released and also how it should be released, all the parties that are involved. So I think that, for me, I want to follow what the statute says versus, as much as I would love to release a whole bunch of stuff at any time, whenever, but we have a statute we have to follow that specifically lays out who and how. So that's why I want to follow this process.
Yeah, board membership.
I think hearing that is saying we want to follow this process, and I think, but clearly what are we voting on, we're saying we're doing tonight with this vote? Because it sounds like we're saying both things. You know, that we wanted to follow the process, we want to make sure we follow the statute, and we want to take time to do this and make sure we do the right thing. But what are we talking about then voting on tonight? I'm kind of a little torn. Investigate, it says, investigate process, review, and board governance recommendation. So that's, and so we're saying that, but we're also talking about releasing information if we can. So I'm not sure we're saying the same
Does it say
thing.
investigate?
Well, I was going to ask, at the conclusion of questions, to make sure everybody's on the same page, can you restate the motion, please?
Yes. I move that the board prepare a summary report regarding the recently completed investigation process to be completed by the end of September, on or before the end of September. The report shall be consistent with all applicable personnel, confidentiality, and legal requirements. Its scope shall address the investigation process, key lessons learned, and recommended improvements to governance, policy, procedure, and oversight with the aim of promoting transparency, accountability, and public trust without disclosing any legally protected or confidential information.
All right. Any other questions, comments, or statements? I think we're ready for the question. There's been a motion. It's been properly seconded. All those in favor by show of hands. All those opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, the next motion for this evening is the 12-month pay option and payroll deduction implementation. I turn to Board Member Hatch to make this motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that the board direct the superintendent to implement a 12-month payroll option for eligible employees requesting it pursuant to NCGS 115C-3021B and 115C-316A2. The superintendent shall present a report at the September 22nd, 2026 regular board meeting detailing the compliance status of CMS's current payroll practices with statutory requirements, a defined request process and form for employees, an implementation timeline, a staff communication and enrollment plan, and solutions for any payroll, technical, or administrative barriers. Should CMS conclude that existing options, such as split direct deposit or external savings account, fulfill these statutory requirements, the report must cite the legal authority supporting that determination.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
It's been properly made by Hatch and seconded. Dr. Hatch, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I want to provide some context for why I'm bringing this motion forward publicly. This started with something very simple. I listened to our educators. And I'm bringing it forward publicly because educators deserve to know that when they raise legitimate concerns, those concerns don't just disappear into an inbox. They deserve to see that their board is listening, asking questions, and working every day, not only for the children we serve, but for the people on the front line serving those children. We talk a lot about teacher recruitment and retention. Retention is also about whether people feel heard, valued, and supported by the systems around them. Sometimes that means compensation, sometimes it means working conditions, and sometimes it means fixing a process that creates an unnecessary burden. And that's what this motion is about. North Carolina law says eligible teachers may request to receive their annual salary in 12 monthly installments. The request is filed with the employing school district, and NCGS 115C-302.1B says the local school administrative unit shall fulfill this requirement through a payroll deduction plan. NCGS 115C-316A2 provides a similar option for eligible 10 and 11-month employees, and this isn't something without precedence. Other North Carolina districts already have a formal 12-month pay process,
Alamance, Burlington, and Transylvania County have board policies providing a 12-month pay option for eligible employees, and Guilford has used a 12-month pay option form for 10-month employees. There's also an important reason this conversation matters now. The State Employees Credit Union changed how it does business. The current summer cash information directs employees to fund the account through funds transfer or ACH direct deposit. That means employees using this option may have to determine how much to set aside and manage that arrangement themselves. I appreciate staff providing information about summer cash and split direct deposit. Those may be useful financial tools. But I think we have to distinguish between helping an employee save for the summer and the district fulfilling an employee's request to receive their annual salary in 12 monthly installments. So my question is simple. What is CMS's payroll deduction plan for an eligible employee who formally requests 12 monthly installments? And I'm not making a legal determination tonight that we are out of compliance, but I am asking for a report to satisfy that we are. If CMS's existing options satisfy the statute, then let's clearly identify the process employees use and provide the legal authority supporting that interpretation. If they don't, let's fix it. And I think there's an opportunity here beyond compliance. We are already making significant investments in our payroll systems, and it shouldn't only be something that employees hear about, they should be able to feel it. If we're modernizing it, then we should be making tangible improvements. This motion doesn't increase anyone's salary. It doesn't change annual compensation. It simply asks whether eligible employees who want their existing salary distributed across 12 months have a clear, accessible process for doing so that is consistent with state law. And importantly, I am not asking the board to design a payroll system. That is administration's responsibility. Our responsibility is to establish the expectation, ensure we understand our compliance, and ask whether the systems we oversee are serving our employees well. Our educators spend every day showing up for our children. They deserve to see the board showing up for them too. And if we already have a compliance solution, let's make it clear and accessible. If we don't, let's build one. And for those reasons, I ask my colleagues to support the motion.
Is there any other comment? Board Member Stone?
Yeah, I didn't even know they'd stopped doing it, because in 2012, Stack got it through, and through Teacher Voices, and the superintendent and the executive council at that point in time agreed. Luckily, I didn't need to do that as much as I did the first time around when I taught in the 70s. Desperately needed to do it then. But having a second income changes things. So I'm curious, when did it stop being offered in CMS?
Well, I think that can be a part of the report. The expectation this evening wasn't necessarily for staff to report, but that can be a part of the report in the future. I mean, the report that's being asked for. Oh, you have a question? Does that satisfy your response? Unless you want to amend the
Well,
motion.
I would just wonder why we changed our mind.
Would you like that
It looked-
included in the report?
Needs to be.
I don't know what the language of, I mean, is that included in the language of the
I
report?
think it can be incorporated in what's already written.
But we have a specific language, so the motion may need to be amended. I got you.
It doesn't limit, it's not limited to that.
Correct.
Yeah.
And it says here, should CMS conclude that existing options fulfill these, the report can cite it. We can add it. I mean, we can make a friendly motion to say the rationale, because again, I'm not asserting that it is or is not happening. I'm asking that we get the details, and so we can include that, and I will, are you okay with me accepting the friendly motion, Madam Chair? Friendly motion?
Yes, I just want to make sure that's, to
Yeah, I mean.
include, because that's not going to be answered tonight, you know what I
Right.
mean?
Okay, just raise that up so we do get an answer.
We do.
I see.
Oh, okay, sorry, I don't know, you look at me.
Okay, so you're adding that language.
Rationale for changes since 2012.
Madam Chair,
We have that data.
as a rule, y'all don't accept friendly amendments, so if Ms. Board Member Stone wants to make the amendment, she could make the amendment to modify the original amendment. It would need to be seconded and voted on per y'all's practice, and then it would go back to the original motion.
Well, it hasn't been
She
seconded.
can't do
I'm just
Okay,
asking, I don't know that she wants to go through
I
the
don't think
process.
it can be a part of the report.
Yeah, just include it in
part
the
of the report
report.
versus
Can you
going
put that
through
in there?
Right.
an
Without having to
amendment
change
to
a
the
motion and all that
motion.
kind of stuff. I just think we ought to
I
know.
was gonna say, it is part, I'm familiar with this and when
Okay.
it changed, so.
So you're not offering a friendly amendment?
No,
Okay.
don't need to if it's in the report.
There
Okay.
is, yeah.
All right. Board membership.
Yeah, my question is just that, and I don't know if it's a question, it's also a statement, that we went through a process. I was on 12-month years ago, and I do remember when it changed because of what the state was no longer able to help us do in terms of making this an easy process for payroll. And then State Employees Credit Union picked it up, and I know there were some changes there. So I think what we're asking here is what can be done now that even the state did not make this process continue for 12 months? What would we do locally is that, and I think that becomes the question. And can we do it, and what's the process? And I think that, is that what you're really asking?
I would say the motion as written is trying to understand, are we complying with the state statute? So not should we, but are we complying with the state statute? And if we are, how? And if we're not, then what are we going to do?
Right, and I think that information can be given to us, and it is there. Thank you.
Vice Chair Rankin.
I just want to make sure I heard it correctly. Could you read the first part of the motion just one more time? Because I thought I heard something different.
I move that the board direct the superintendent to implement a 12-month payroll option for eligible employees requesting it pursuant to NCGS 115C-302.1B and 115C-316A2.
Okay, perfect, because I'm hearing two different things. I'm hearing that when we direct to do the 12-month option, that means it's going to be done. So I thought, it was under my impression that we were gonna, because I don't have, that we would get the report,
That's right.
and then based off that report, that a decision can be made. Because right now, with the way the motion is written, we're directing the 12-month option, like it's gonna be, like a 12-month option has to be implemented, and we don't even have the information.
Well, I think you have to look at the motion in totality. So that is the first part, and then it says the superintendent will present a report at September 22nd with what it would take. And then if CMS concludes that we're already fulfilling it, then the report would say that as well. But if you are welcome to amend the motion.
Because you got the word implement.
The motion itself in totality is saying that as a board, we're going to make sure we're compliant with the state statute. So if we're not compliant, we're going to get compliant. If we are compliant, we're going to have documentation to support that.
For clarity.
One second.
For clarity.
1 second. Okay.
I wouldn't.
No, go ahead.
For me, okay, so for clarity, I think I get what you're saying in totality, because right now, currently, it is the district's understanding that a 12-month option is currently being offered. So if we're directing that, then it's being offered. Then the report will follow, and that the information that we receive about this, and then from the district or the staff, if we are in compliance with what you're saying, then that's fine. If not, there needs to be an adjustment to make sure that we are in compliance.
If we're not, yes, and if we're not in compliance, then there will be a report to say how we will get in compliance.
Okay.
Dr. Witherspoon, I know you have a friend,
Go ahead.
unless you want to hear the friendly amendment first before your comment.
Yeah, we don't have friendly amendments, I don't think, right? Parliamentary.
Amend the motion.
Okay, I think here's an unfriendly amendment. No, I'm kidding. I think the key word here is implement. So why don't we say, the superintendent to look at a 12-month payroll option for eligible employees requesting it? And then the superintendent will be able to present a report, which will allow us to get that information and decide how to move forward. Was that,
I'm completely fine with that.
okay. Do I have to tell you the whole thing?
You're going to need to state exactly
Okay.
what your motion is. It's going to need a second. It's going to be voted, and then assuming it
Okay.
passes, then you'll go back to the original motion.
Okay, so Madam Chair, yes, ma'am.
It's the word review or look at.
Review?
To review.
Okay. Madam Chair,
Or maybe not.
Let her make her
Yeah, you go
amendment to the motion, and then we can have questions about, or comments about the amendment if it's seconded. So please make your amendment.
All right. Madam Chair, I move the board direct the superintendent to review a 12-month payroll option for eligible employees requesting it pursuant to NCGS SS 115C-302.1B and 115C-316 A2. The superintendent shall present a report at the September 22nd, 2026 regular board meeting detailing compliance status of CMS's current payroll practices with statutory requirements, a defined request process and form for employees, an implementation timeline. Well, this we'll have to talk about because if we're going to deliberate, we shouldn't ask for an implementation timeline. So I'm going to remove the implementation timeline.
What it would take, maybe you say a draft. or
Okay,
suggested,
a
'cause we
draft, a draft implementation timeline, a draft staff communication and enrollment plan, and draft solutions for any payroll, technical, and administrative barriers. Should CMS conclude that existing options such as split direct deposit or external savings accounts fulfill these statutory requirements, the report must cite the legal authority supporting that determination.
Second.
So there's an amendment that's been properly made and seconded. Discussion. And Dr. Witherspoon, I'm turning to you because you had a question before. I'm not sure if your question's been satisfied. I think you did.
Yeah, I did. I just trying to keep up.
Okay, you know what I think we should do? If you can do the, he's writing it. If we can do a reading of that motion, the amendment one more time.
Great. Okay. Madam Chair, I move that the board direct the superintendent to review a 12-month payroll option for the eligible employees requesting it pursuant to NCGS 115C-302.1B and 115C-316A2. The superintendent shall present a report at the September 22nd, 2026 regular board meeting detailing compliance status of CMS current payroll practices with statutory requirements, a defined request process and form for employees, a draft implementation timeline, a draft communication and enrollment plan, solutions for any payroll, technical, or administrative barriers. Should CMS conclude the existing options such as split direct deposit or external savings account fulfill these statutory requirements, the report must cite the legal authority supporting the determination.
Madam Chair, Ms. Monterey Duval, on number 5, did you want to put draft there? You said it originally in your motion.
Yeah, let's do draft for 1 and 5.
So I believe the changes, if I could, Madam Chair,
Yes.
Ms. Monterey Duval, is in the first, instead of directing the superintendent to implement, you're directing the superintendent to review. You're changing the word implement to review. And then on items 3, 4, and 5, the changes are to put draft in front of those. Those
And
are
2, which is a defined process.
Okay, so 2, 3, and 4,
Yeah.
4, and 5. Okay.
Yes, because 2 is a defined request process and form for employees. So that should also be in
those are the
form of
changes in the
draft.
motion, is to change it from implement to review. I'm sorry, 12-month, implement to review a 12-month option, and then put the word draft in front of items 2, 3, 4, and 5 in the motion. That's the substitute motion before the committee.
So, Mr. Parliamentarian, can you read the amendment in its entirety, please?
The amendment, as she stated, it would be just to that. It'd be,
No, I want you to,
to read the whole thing?
Yes,
It would be,
please.
Madam Chair, I move that the board direct the superintendent to review a 12-month payroll option for eligible employees requesting it pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 115C 302.1B and 115C 316A2. The superintendent shall present a report at the September 22nd, 2026 regular board meeting detailing 1, compliance status of CMS current payroll practices with statutory requirements. 2, a draft defined request process and form for employees. Number 3, a draft implementation timeline. Number 4, a draft staff communication and enrollment plan. Number 5, a draft solutions for any payroll, technical, administrative barriers. The final paragraph remains the same.
All right.
May I see that?
Any other questions or comments?
I might, I just want to.
Yeah, I'll come back to you. I'm just asking in the interim. Okay.
Well, I guess
Go
a
ahead.
comment. Thank you. So this is really us asking, or not asking, but directing the superintendent to provide us with a report or a presentation report on, are we currently meeting the general statute requirements? If so, explaining that and who the authority is. If not, what is the plan to be in compliance with the statute?
Yes.
No question, comment? No, okay. Are we ready for the question?
Yes.
All right, so we have a motion, we're voting on the amendment to the motion that has been properly seconded. Is another reading necessary?
No.
Are board members
No.
clear? Okay, just want to,
Why not? Well, read it again.
yes, if you can, I didn't understand the comment. If you, Mr. Parliamentarian,
Yes, ma'am.
can you please read the amendment from beginning, to the end?
The amendment would be, do you want me to read the entire motion with the amended changes, assuming the amendment passes? Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Madam Chair, I move that the board direct the superintendent to review a 12-month payroll option for eligible employees requesting it pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 115C 302.1B and 115C 316A2. Superintendent shall present a report at the September 22, 2026 regular board meeting detailing 1, compliance status of CMS's current payroll practices with statutory requirements. 2, a draft defined request process and form for employees. 3, a draft implementation timeline. 4, a draft staff communication and enrollment plan. And 5, a draft of solutions for any payroll, technical, or administrative barriers. Should CMS conclude that existing options such as split direct deposit or external savings account fulfill these statutory requirements, the report must cite the legal authority supporting that determination.
All right, so that is the amendment that is on the floor that's been properly seconded. Are we ready for the question?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Witherspoon, did you have a question? Oh, okay. All those in favor of the amendment, mind you, we're voting on the amendment. It's unanimous, Madam Clerk. So the motion carries. So then that's,
Back to the original motion as amended.
okay. So now we have to vote on the original motion as amendment because the amendment has been accepted. So what has been read, unless you want to read it again.
Man,
I'm happy to if you want me to.
no.
I say, why not?
Man.
Can you read the motion that we're voting on?
The motion that you're now voting on as amended by the previous action of the board would say, Madam Chair, I move that the board direct the superintendent to review a 12-month payroll option for eligible employees requesting it pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 115C 302.1B and 115C 316A2. Superintendent shall present a report at the September 22, 2026 regular board meeting detailing compliance status of CMS's current payroll practices with statutory requirements, a draft refined request process and form for employees. Number 3, a draft implementation timeline. Number 4, a draft staff communication and enrollment plan. 5, draft solutions for any payroll, technical, or administrative barriers. Should CMS conclude that existing options, such as split direct deposit or external savings account, fulfill these statutory requirements, the report must cite the legal authority supporting that determination.
Thank you. So we have a motion before us that has been properly amended. Any other comments or questions before voting? Being none, I see none. All those in favor of the motion as amended? It's unanimous, Madam Clerk. All right, there being no further business, this meeting is adjourned.